Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Pulse Talk Show. We are talking about the socio-political significance of the holy month of Ramadan.
So when our kids, they come to us, or even people from, because in the West, there are many people from outside the community
Yeah.
who might come and say that, why are you doing this?
Yeah, they have iftar sessions where people come
And they are
and
genuinely
visit.
interested
Yeah,
because you
sure.
see people around the world are stuck in these crises. They know that their own cultures are deficient, their own cultures are self-collapsing,
Sure.
but they don't know what to do. So
Yeah.
whenever they find something which is out of their own normal, they want to talk about it, they want to ask about it, right?
This is interesting. You had brought up in one of the talk shows that unfortunately many of our brothers and sisters, their communities have become very, you use the term cultish. And so you have these people that are outside of this closed circuit community who are thirsty, who are searching for water. The community, because of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, has that water, and they're not opening up and letting these people in and drink from that water.
Exactly.
You know, for whatever reasons, but this is what's happening.
One of the fundamental reasons is because they don't really realize what they have, right? They don't realize that this is Kawthar.
Yeah.
This can quench the thirst of the entirety of humanity. But they even themselves, in a manner of speaking, at a lower level, even themselves they're dying of thirst because they're stuck with all these problems themselves. Right?
So you were talking about referring to the Holy Quran and the Holy month
So referring
of
to the Holy Quran, and so the kids, they are asking us about the relevance of these actions. Now,
yeah, why should we be fasting?
Why in Ramadan? Why not in some other time?
Yeah.
It is now a fad, a fashion to do intermittent fasting anyway in the West, right?
Apparently, yeah.
So why not just do it the entire year long? Why in Ramadan, right? And then if I want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or any supreme being, why should I get up and get down and get up and get down and get up and get down and have my knees squeak and my back ache? It makes more sense to sit and think, meditate.
The famous thinking statue guy.
Yeah, this way, or the Buddha, right?
Or the Buddha,
lotus pose.
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
Pose.
So unless we know the philosophy behind these things, it would become, generation after generation, it will become difficult to convince people just.
Yeah, of course.
And unfortunately, another tragedy that comes out of this is that when you do not know the philosophy behind these things, I'm not talking about 100% of all the entirety of the wisdom
the
behind
ultimate reality.
Yeah. I'm talking about the philosophy that we can understand and which the Ahlul Bayt have already spoken of. If you don't know this and if you can't transfer this on to the next generation, then basically what you're doing in terms of just being a ritual is equal to what a Hindu is doing, a Buddhist is doing, a Christian is doing, or anyone else is doing. Because they're all rituals, right?
Like a hand-me-down religion type thing.
And then you fall into the trap of relativism. It's already, the propaganda is kind of immersive in the West anyway and around the world. So your kids will start saying that, look, what's important is being a good person. So it doesn't matter if you're worshipping the Supreme Being. Why even call him Allah? The Supreme Being, it doesn't matter if you're looking this way or the other way. These are just rituals.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is where things will
go. They start to crumble.
Exactly, right?
Fall apart.
And for other people, this might not be such a big issue because nobody knows the foundations of their beliefs. Like, for example, some cult, it's really made up, right? When they study their own history, they know that it's made up.
Yeah.
It's not something that is truly. But for a school of thought which has this divine treasury from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the Ma'asumeen, and then you lose it, something that the older generations have preserved through their blood, through their sweat, through their toil, through all of these sacrifices, and then in a matter of a few generations, just because we're lazy and we don't study our texts, we let it go like that, it would be a huge tragedy. So, coming back to our topic, we kind of went off in another direction. What is the socio-political significance of Ramadan?
And well, this social political significance, because I want to set the stage a little bit, but this socio-political significance of the holy month of Ramadan is one of those answers to why we're doing all this, why the holy month of Ramadan, why obedience to the Almighty Allah, kind of talking from the previous episode, why obedience to wilaya and the system of wilaya, and also all of these things that you're about to now open up, they fall under this discussion. It's not disconnected. I wanted to let people know that.
Like the famous sentence goes, nothing succeeds like success, right? Nothing is a greater marketing tool, a greater tool for convincing others than actual tangible success, right?
Sure.
So if we look at contemporary events that have happened, why have so many people in the West started reading the Quran? Because they used to see on social media, on mainstream media, that you have this nation, they're being bombarded, they're being slaughtered, killed every day.
And then
the Palestinians. And then they stand up and their women and their children, this Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakeel. So all of a sudden there's this person watching this, he says, what's going on here?
I mean, it's mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing.
The people are coming from under the rubble of buildings that have been destroyed.
And say, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, God be praised. All gratitude is to God. So this in itself, you see, the words are still, they're the same as the things that I say. It's still a ritual, right? But when that ritual is creating that effect, it is moving worlds around. It is causing other people's attention to be focused upon the Quran. So now many people around the world are reading the Quran to find out how the Quran could create a nation like this. How the Quran could create a spiritual strength within people to be able to sustain and come out successfully of such a calamity, of such an onslaught from a oppressing enemy. So in the same manner, if we do not have something that we can show and display as the output of Ramadan, as the output of religiosity in general, so the question would be valid that what difference does it make? Especially in an era in which we say time is money, right? So we need outputs.
What's the dollar value?
What's the dollar value of having all of these, spending an entire month in this manner, right? So let us go back and see what, in the words of Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi, in one of his books, he explains that each and every piece of ritual prayer and ritual worship within Islam is designed in order to allow you to better obey and become closer to the hujjah of your time, to that representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your time, which is the master of the age, Imam al-Hujjah, Ajalullah ta'ala farajah al-Sharif. Why?
Yeah, well, before why, say it one more time, Sayyida Ghali Raza.
The same thing?
This whole thing about what Ayatollah Misbah Yazdi said, and how that all of the rituals that, well, I guess I'll repeat it, but all of the rituals that you do, all of this salat, all of these du'as, this worship, this obedience, what it does is it creates a stronger connection between the individual and the hujjah, the proof of the Almighty Allah, which in our case is Imam al-Mahdi, may Allah hasten his reappearance, right?
Exactly.
Now you were going to say why.
So why do we need this connection? Because Islam being the holistic religion that it is, Islam not being like other ideologies that are only looking towards the material aspect of human individuals and societies, or only looking at the spiritual aspect like Buddhism, only looking at the spiritual aspect of individuals and societies, Islam looks at the entire picture. Right? And looking at the entire picture, it can see the spiritual hurdles that lie between human excellence, where I stand today, and the potentiality that I can realize, and it also sees the material hurdles that lie in my path, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, it designs a software that can remove all of these hurdles holistically. So that, because obviously, if imagine a road which has that I need to walk on. Now, if I clear half of the road, but not the other half, and it is kind of a road that requires me to walk the entire width of it, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like, so if I even if I remove half of the hurdles, I still can't move. I still cannot actually go forward because the other half is still blocked.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So, in fact, if you've ever had your finger stuck in a ring or in a bottle or anything of this sort, unless the exact amount of area that needs to be freed is freed, you won't be able to get your finger out.
Well, it's like the kid if you've seen the rail bars,
yeah,
right?
they get stuck
They
in there.
put their head in,
Yeah.
but then they can't take their head out.
Exactly.
It's quite scary.
Because it doesn't matter. It might be a millimeter, right? But that millimeter needs to be cleared out in order for you to be able to get yourself out of that situation. So if you have, for example, if you remove all of the material hurdles, right? If you're not like, if you're healthy and you have money and you are mentally, you are psychologically healthy and maybe you have friends and everything, like many of the people in the West or around the world, right? You have people who are materially satisfied with their lives, but they have spiritual obstacles. Right? You will see that they will be standing in the holistic sense of the word, they won't be going forward. Right? So Islam designs itself, because it is a divine software, to remove all of these hurdles. When you remove these hurdles, you move towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Which is this ultimate
Which is the ultimate goal,
creation,
right? Because He is
purpose.
perfection and you are trying to achieve perfection. The only way to achieve perfection is to get out of this cage of deficiency, of inherent deficiency, and become part of that endless ocean of absolute perfection. So when you move towards that, the only path that can take you towards that within the teachings of Islam, and obviously this in itself is a different, completely independent topic, that why is the Immaculate Imam the only path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why can't we have parallel paths? Why can't we have different, like a host of different ways of circumventing the Imam and going to the... This is such a universally accepted idea within in Islam in general, across the board, that all of the Sufi schools of thought who are from the Ahl Sunnah, even they believe that you cannot go towards Wilayatullah, the Wilayat of Allah, except through the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And interestingly, maybe many of our brothers and sisters might not know this, that when it comes to the Sufi traditions, when it comes to the spiritual traditions of Islam, which, let me mention, are the vast majority of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Yes, there is a tiny minority which the mainstream media wants to make into 90% of all of its coverage. These takfiris and these petrodollar based sects and of extremists. But on the ground, the vast majority, which they call themselves the Sawad al-Azam, the great majority. Literally it would be the great blackness, but that is because if you have too many people standing somewhere, the heads, they would look like a sea of black people, right? They call themselves as Sawad al-Azam. So the vast majority of the Ummah are, they pertain to these Sufi schools of thought, right? And they might be Hanafi or Shafi'i or something else.
So they have jurisprudential and fiqh schools of thought, but they also have a Sufi tariqat and leaning towards one of these.
Now, all of these Sufi schools of thought,
which is the majority of
which is the majority in Pakistan, in India, in Africa, all over the world, Turkey, right? All of them believe that the only path towards realizing that divine, that essential unity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the spiritual unity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and reaching what they call Wilayatullah, is through the path of the Ahlul Bayt. And when they actually name the Ahlul Bayt, these are these 12 Imams of the Ahlul Bayt. So there is no difference of opinion in the vast majority of the Ummah, Shia and Sunni alike, the vast majority. Yes, there are fringes, there are people, there are fringes within the Shia who believe in another set of Imams or another...
but the vast majority...
But the vast majority is of this sort.
The 12 Imams,
Exactly.
And so this is what you were saying, was that you need this Imam, and even in the Ahl Sunnah,
so there is a consensus.
That is the pole or the qutb, the center that leads you to the connection with the Almighty Allah.
Exactly.
So even though we didn't want to answer this question.
We didn't, but like, that's something that we end up doing always, right?